So lots of folks go and see a big show happening, and they see all the lights and all the tricks and all the magic happening, but they're not sure what it is. Tell everybody today what it is that a production manager like Charlie Hernandez does.
Well, we're the guys and gals, because there's some great women production managers out there now. We're the people that take it from basic, from the napkin, where people are sitting around going, wouldn't it be great if we had this and this and shit showing up and that. So we take it from the napkin into what the public sees when they walk into an arena. A lot of people say, to this day, people walk into an arena and they think that stuff's there already, all there. Mm-hmm. It's always there. Mm-hmm. Or they reconfigure it to a certain way and, the artist shows up, which it used to be in the old days. Mm-hmm. The artist would show up, the promoter would have the sound and lights, and what you got is what you got, play, get out. That was the deal. Some bands decided that they wanted to control their show, they wanted to control their look and their ideas and their vision, so that's how we started in this business. And people like, Jerry Stickles and Chip Monk and people like that, and the moving of shows from city to city, they pioneered that sort of way of thinking. So I always say that I can't be me without all of them, which is my lighting companies, my sound companies, my riggers, my stage managers, my carpenters, the caterers, the people, the local promoters, we're all in on it in the end, and I've tried very hard to erase the line of the us and them, the front of house, the back of house, the, oh, that's the promoter's bit, oh, the promoter's this. No, we're all in this together at this, in this business now, and we're all trying to get to the next place. We're all trying to be successful. We're trying to present our clients in the best light that we possibly can, and it's a very extensive network of people, like-minded people that are very goal-oriented, that think about very linear thinking, but sort of like if you an electron is this big, but there's a cloud around it, and that's the kind of thinking. You have this linear thought of how to get there, but there's this cloud of energy that moves with that laser precision.
So let me talk about, let's break it down, because I've been involved on this, from the manager. My favorite spot, Charlie, is at the sound desk when everything's been loaded in and so forth. But describe, if you would, your typical day. Your show's been booked. We're playing the Bridgestone Arena here in Nashville, Tennessee. It's a big act. They're coming in. You get there in the morning. What happens until the time the lights go on?
Well, the show really starts 6 months before that. Okay. When we get the booking sheet and the routing, and we put the routing together, and we're designing the show, putting the show together, building the show, etc. So we're building a show, we're engineering a show based on the booking and the budget, and so all that has to be taken into account. Then we put together that the overall idea of what the show needs to move from place to place, which is our rider. And we get that out to the local promoters, to the people, and they get it, they call back, they tell us this, we can hang that, we can rigging plots. And so a lot of the work is in the advance, a lot of the work, the giant part of the work, it's, I always say it's all about the advance. Because once you walk into the building, once you're there that morning at 6 a.m. or at 8 a.m., whatever the time is that you're going to start, it's too late to figure it out. You got to know going in what you're about to face. You got to have your labor calls in place. You have to have, your catering, if you have your own catering. You have to have all these pieces of the puzzle ready to go for when you walk in, so you're able to, at 8 o'clock, you get your labor together, and you have 60 people standing there. What are we doing?
Those are the stage hands.
Yeah, the stage hands and the local infrastructure that we may walk in with 48 of our people. There'll be another 60 or 70 people locally to deal with, so you're dealing with 135, 140 people. 8 o'clock is not the time to kind of figure it out.
Be improvised.
Yeah. So, you know, the show really starts, you know, six
Now, let me make
months
a little point
before
here,
that. Yeah.
because what people don't understand is that not every venue is the same. You have brand new.
You have to
venues,
do this
got
at every
old build-
venue. You have to do this at every venue, every stop of the book. You're doing the same the same intelligence report that you. It's really, yeah, recon. You're doing the same intelligence report for every show that you're doing, and you apply the variables of every show to your show. And if you're smart, you design your show with an overall common denominator that will apply to all the buildings that you're going into. For example, if you're doing baseball stadiums, right, and you know you're going to play Dodger Stadium and Oakland and this place and that place. However, you're also going to play Wrigley, Boston, and you know, the original stadiums, the smallest. Wrigley and Boston are probably the last ones left that really apply. So you have to design a show that's small enough to fit into that place and still maintain the integrity of whatever the show is. You know, Yankee Stadium is a different parameter. It's a giant building. Oakland is a giant building. But at the same time, you have to go ahead. You have to start at what the smallest common denominator. And it's easy to expand. It's very difficult to contract when you're doing when you're moving a show like that. And you apply that the same thing with arenas and whatever you're doing, clubs or whatever show is. You have to take into account where you're going and be smart about your design so that you're able to adapt to different circumstances. No two buildings are the same. You know, no city's the same, no two people are the same. So you apply that to that kind of engineering and that kind of design for the show.
Good. Let me let's change gears a little bit here. You know, we talk a lot, you know, on our show, and one of the things I've attempted to do is try to mentor people about the real business. Yeah, I started on the booking side of things, and I had some mentors that showed me the ropes. Being a production manager, organizing, being the captain of all those trucks and all that sound and all that lights and all those people you see scurrying around is not something they teach in college, right? So who taught Charlie all that stuff? Who were your mentors? Did you have some mentors along the way?
You know, I got to tell you, you know, that I was very fortunate that I worked for some great bands when I was young.
Who were some of the bands you worked with?
Well, the best example I can give is a guy named Billy Squire, right? This is like 1979 through 88, 90, you know, to today, really. He's one of my closest friends. My son's middle name is William. You know, that's how far and how much I love the guy, you know. But here's a guy that, you know, went into had a band called Piper, was managed by Bill Aucoin, decided to go solo, got a deal with Capitol Records, put out an album, got a bunch of #1 hits. Same time that MTV was coming out, that whole media, you know, guerrilla that was out there. And we were the favored nation support act of whoever was the biggest act in the world those days. Whether it was Foreigner when Foreigner 4 came out, Pat Benatar, Queen, Jefferson Starship, Alice Cooper, you know, all these bands, we were the support act. So I got to see, when I was coming up in the first years that I was doing what I did, and there really wasn't production manager. Those positions kind of evolved from those days. So I got to see how shows were put together, how people did things, and I got to make my own opinion of like, well, that was smart, that's not so smart. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it like this, and we'll create. I think I can create something that can move and be more efficient than how these people are doing it. You know, so, you know, that's how I learned. And when Billy became a headlining act, you know, I was able to. I was fortunate to have someone like him to say, yes, let's go this way, do it your way, and we got clearly results. Or you know, it's
the ultimate.
I mean,
arbiter,
you know,
yeah.
If you shit the bed, you shit the bed.
Yes.
Sorry,
no,
kids.
We can have that. By the way, that's going to be one of our great sayings. If you shit the bed, you shit the bed.
Yeah. There's not a lot coming back from that.
No.
You know, so you know, you have that kind of motivation, you know. So, and if you have an artist that works very hard and works all the time, and you have a personal stake in it because you've come up with them, you know, it becomes this, you know, this kind of, you know, you feel a familial responsibility to everyone in the place. So, so people like Rick O'Brien, for example, who was one of the greatest people that I ever met. You know, I was very serious, very, you know, but we did a tour with Billy Squier, and he was the opening act for Queen. It was the last time Queen toured America. It was the Hot Space tour, and, you know. And Jerry Stickles was the production manager, and Rick O'Brien was the stage manager. He ran the shop, he ran the thing, you know. And I got to see really how great it can be, how serious it is, because Queen, there was no half measures with that band. You know, it was serious stuff, and edge of technology, movement overhead, large pieces of lighting trusses, flying spotlights, Freddie, pyro, fire, all of that. And Rick had a sense of humor about it, and he taught me how to be a human being on tour. You know, and I've always said that he was a real influence in my life. You know, I saw how big a show can be, and how great it is when you have people that work with you that are of the same mindset, of the same humor, of the same energy and work ethic. And when you have that, it's really an unstoppable force.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I spent a lot of time in the concert business, and there were some production managers who shall remain nameless that were tyrants, that thought the game was to be bullying everybody around and being jerks. And so it's interesting to hear you say, and I sense that about you as a person, that getting along out there when you're on the road, living with somebody, and you're moving this circus from city to city every day under the pressure of having that 9 o'clock start time, it requires a certain deft touch in terms of dealing with people.
I think that there's you know, you can put 4 guys in a room, 4 production managers, 5, 6 production managers. You know, we all have a different style of how we do things. You know, but in the end, if you're successful and you're at a certain level, we all achieve the same goal. You know, and there's different styles of doing it. When I first started, it was, you know, I was very hard, you know, but the thing is that I have to. My approach has always been, my approach has grown into, I should say, in the 30 years that, you know, is that. If people understand that you have a line that you're not going to cross, and you come to the table with that energy and that knowledge, and people will know that as you do your advance, you know, and you're talking to them. No, this can't be like that. This is going to be like this. Oh, that can't happen. Well, here's the alternatives and how we can get to that. You know. People will understand that there's a line that you won't cross and you won't compromise. And if you walk in with that, it makes for a much nicer, you know, 24-hour period or 48-hour period in some building that you're going into. But you have to be firm. There is a firmness there. There's a line that, you know, people understand, with me anyway, and you know, and with a lot of my friends, that, you know, okay, you know, don't do that. You know, he will flip. I will flip. You know, you know, I'm not. You know, I'm not some. You know, believe me. You know, brown rice maybe once a week. I'm not some hippie that's like, oh yeah, man, it's fine. You know, it's got to be a certain way, because there's a lot of components involved. And you know, the other thing, like what you said, with people, you know, people come in and they see this. How's it? You know, people think the show starts at 8 o'clock. You know, for us, the show starts at 3. We're doing our components check at 3:30, 4 o'clock. The band walks in. We are show ready every day for sound check. We have to be ready for that. So, you know, there's a lot of components, and compromise is not really a position, but a reasonable conversation is a position to approach it with, you know?
Well, and at the end of the day, you bring up an interesting point. For all of us that are on the professional side of it, if you're not an artist, you're working for the band, and your job is to make that artist look great. Your job is to, and they typically will do their best when they're feeling comfortable. So that's everybody's mission, is to make that happen.
Yeah, I call it the bubble. You know, and that's what I always tell my all the people that work with me. You know, we're putting a bubble around these people. You know, All they need to do is remember the words, do the bit. You know, everything else is taken care of it. You know, there's this great joke. You know, why is it? You know, the Queen of England thinks the world smells like fresh paint because there's 50 people in front of her going, she fucking comes. You know, they're painting it. You know, it's kind of what we do. You know, we want to make it so that, you know, it's an environment where any artist can come in, be comfortable, be relaxed. There's no stress. There's no screaming. There's none of that going on. And what happens then? You get 30 days. You know, 30 shows. And then they go, wow, that was great. Let's do another 30. Let's do another 50. Let's do, you know, let's do another 2 years of touring, because you have this environment that's conducive to not only creativity, but it's conducive to expressing what the artist, you know, and it opens up other windows for them. They don't have to stress about, oh, is this going to work? Or, oh, what the fuck, you know, that kind of. You know.
Artists will. There'll be plenty of things to stress about. Doing a show shouldn't be one of them, because it's been my experience that that's the great payback for most artists, is that energy and that feeling and that validation you get that you can only get. It's the only time you see your quote unquote customer in the flesh, in the whole transaction. You've worked on some of the biggest, baddest, most spectacular productions around, but most of the bands and artists that are watching our program are just starting off. Are there some hints and tricks that you could suggest to people that will give them something bigger and badder than they really can afford, in terms of just overall things about how to present a show in a much more trimmed down fashion than you're used to working with?
Pick up the phone and call Jake Berry or me, or Mark Spring, or Opie, Dale Surseth. You know, all of us. You know, just because that, you know, that we do these giant shows doesn't mean that we don't understand. You know, if it looks great from this, it's going to look great from that. You know, and everything starts from this. You know, and it was like that Stone show that you saw was just wide amp line. Yeah, that was extraordinary. But if you remember, it was a 30-foot wide by 24-foot deep stage. The drum riser was 10 feet from the front of the stage, and there were 2 trees on either side. But still, it made that kind of impression on you. You know, so I don't think that gargantuan shows are the all end all of everything else. It can't. How much bigger will it get from a U2 Claw show? You know, what really stands is the talent, the music, and what that artist is going to go, you know, and what that artist is and what they're going to bring to the table. You know, everything else is the frills and thrills and everything. That's great. But if you don't have the songs, if you don't have the talent, if you don't have, you know, the 3, 4, 5 albums that you need, you know, to create a following, to create an audience, you know, it doesn't matter what you're going to put up there. How many shows have you been to that is just this, you know, extraordinary? Well, what the fuck is that? What is that? You know, coming up out of the ceiling and all that, and then you leave. You leave with a vacuous feeling. You leave unsatisfied. Yeah, no, I'm gonna date myself. I see that a lot today, where it seems like it's more about the spectacle than it is about the song and the performance. And the one that comes to mind is, we were talking about it earlier today. You could take Adele and have her with a piano in one spotlight, and it would be off the hook. Not to pick on Britney Spears, but that's like that doesn't even approach it. You can sell a bunch of sizzle, but it won't make up for the fact that there's no steak there. Okay. Yeah, you know, all those, you know, bands like that. Yeah, bands like that. You know, I won't comment negatively on you know, any artist, because the nerve that you have to stand there, basically, you know, no matter what, you're standing there naked. Your soul is naked, no matter what you're wearing, what you know, to stand there. That, you know, that courage is beyond everything else. So, you know, and it also depends on the environment and the people that are around her, and people that are saying it would be great, or people that are saying to an artist, him or her, you know, it would be great if you had, you know, dragons and flying bats and all this crap, or, you know, but, you know, I'm of the school of you know, you take someone like Tom Waits, you put him on a stage, you give him a bass player, you put 2 spotlights on that thing, and you will leave satisfied at the end of a show that you've experienced something that was transcendent and something that was truth in it. Now, there's also, you know, Madonna, Gaga, all the one-name acts that are out there, that you can sit and you see the spectacle, and you can leave. You can suspend reality, and you can leave satisfied. But there's a lot of acts, there's a lot of ideas out there that are just stuff for stuff's sake.
Yeah.
And that's not that's just
that doesn't require any talent. That requires budget.
That's just budget. You're throwing a lot of money at it. Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Charlie. I'll leave you with one final question. You said something interesting. When I first went to a concert, I noticed the manager, I think, this guy walking around that everybody was coming up and talking to, stood by the sound desk. You went to those shows and you were the guy wondering how all the lights worked, right? And I think everybody goes to a show and they pick up on something. Some people want to be the person singing. If you were speaking to some young kid out there today that's just like you, Charlie, is sitting at a rock show, looking around the room wondering at how it happens, and he wants to get a start today. When you started, there was no structure to it. Today there is. What advice would you give to that kid that wants to be you?
Oh, well, don't piss off your parents.
Fine advice.
I fall back, and this has been said a lot of times, but a good friend of ours, Mark Fisher, who was the greatest show designer engineer. He designed the Claw. He designed all the giant shows that you've seen in the last 25 years. Mark Fisher was the premier guy that did all that. He did the U2 show. He did the Bridges to Babylon with the Stones. He did the Robbie Williams. I mean, just an incredible, kind person. And his advice rings true, and it was true for me. And anyone that asked me about what you asked about, I've always said it. And when he said it, it was almost this kind of, oh, yeah, maybe I do know what I'm talking about moment that I had with him. So, what it is that find what you love, the engineering. Learn the mechanics, go to school, get a degree, go to school, learn mechanical engineering, learn electrical engineering, learn how things work, learn about electricity, learn about weights and measures, learn about forces, wind forces, and learn a technical skill of some kind. Go to a school that teaches, that has a great program in woodworking or construction of some kind. Learn a skill. Be really good at that. Then find a company in your town, a theater company, anything. Find a company that does something that you think that you can come in, walk in the door and say, listen, I know how to do this. How can I help with what you're doing, whatever it is. And then the first thing you do is learn how to work a broom. And you pick up that broom in that little theater or in that lighting shop or the sound shop and just start cleaning up and picking up cable. And if you see something, just do it and start there and learn from that shop, learn what they do, learn how they do it, learn their process. Don't be afraid to suggest, hey, if we did it like this, what do you think? That's how that's where you start. There's a lot of people that think that just because that, they've walked into a football stadium that they can do a football stadium. It's not how it works. The way that it works in our business is a cumulative knowledge-based industry. You start at the broom. You work your way from there. I can't make it any simpler than that. You really have to, but you have to bring something to the table. The days of the tabla rasa, the clean slate kid walking in, big eyes, there's a lot of kids, a lot of people that have technical knowledge that will jump over that, no matter how much energy and there's a few that jump in there and that's great, but learn a skill, get a degree, stay in school. I know that 4 years sounds like an interminable number when you're 17, because that's a quarter of your life when you think about it. But get that experience, get that school experience, get that discipline, and then when you walk into a place, you're bringing something to the table that you can offer, and you can take that. Then once you succeed, and you have the power to be able to make decisions, to be able to do things, then start thinking about how you're going to help somebody else. Start thinking about how you're going to help the person at the end of your driveway, on the right and the left. You know, somebody might call you and say, hey, you know, there's something happening on the other side of the road. Maybe your expertise is you're able to move giant cities around the world, which is what I do. You know, so instead of doing a bunch of staging or whatever, you put medical supplies on an aircraft, and you call your friends and you move that thing over there, and you apply what you've learned in your life into something better.